1/3 of all food goes uneaten, while 2 billion people are facing food insecurity worldwide. While many things contribute to this issue, consumers are responsible for 40 to 50% of all food wasted in most high-income countries. And while shocking, it's good news. It means that we have the power to reduce the impacts of wasted food on an individual level. Food Waste Pod-Vention is made possible through partnerships with Washington State University Vancouver's student-run radio station, Coug Radio, and the Washington State Department of Ecology. For questions about the information discussed in this episode, contact info@clarkgreenneighbors.org.
Hey everyone, welcome to Food Waste Pod-Vention. I'm Austin with the Clark County Composter Recycler Program.
And I'm Bethany with the Clark County Green Neighbors Program.
We're AmeriCorps, serving the solid waste education and outreach team, and we're here to talk food waste in honor of Food Waste Prevention Week, a national sustainability campaign where 48 states, 11 countries, and over 600 organizations inspired their communities to stop food waste in the first place.
Tune in to hear our experts speak.
It's Food Waste Prevention Week.
For today's episode, I want to welcome Pete DuBois, Clark County's own Composting Pete. Pete just celebrated his 30th year with Clark County and is currently our Composter Recycler Program senior lead. Pete has a Master's of Science in Economics from Portland State University and, fun fact, he also plays the guitar and very kindly created our podcast jingle. Thank you for being here today, Pete.
Great to be here.
Well, we are happy to have you on this podcast today. And as I'm sure most of our listeners are wondering, they would like to know a little bit more about you. So can you tell us about your journey to becoming Composting Pete?
Wow. Well, as Bethany mentioned, 30 years I just completed with Clark County. And before that, at the very early beginning, I started out through music. And I went to an Association of Oregon Recyclers conference to network. And we were sitting around a fire, and one guy had a drum, and all of a sudden we were chanting garbage and other recycling type things. Mm-hmm. And then one of the people around the fire said, "Hey, I have this youth conference going on. Would you guys be the band?"
No way.
And so we quickly formed a band called the Garbage Gurus and wrote a bunch of songs, and it just kind of rolled from there.
Wow. That's fantastic.
You know, I've heard a few stories about the last 30 years for Pete's wandering band of recycling expert musicians, and every new story is just as exciting as the last. You guys really had such a reach in this community, too, from what it sounds like.
Yes, and within those 3 decades, actually, just prior to that, there was no recycling. So we just take it for granted, and there's a great saying that more people recycle than vote. Mm. So it's very popular in a lot of ways, and it wasn't always that way. So folks had to pay extra money just to have a truck come by, and we were kind of the mosquito fleet, they would call it. And I worked for a worker cooperative at the time, and actually drove a recycling truck.
Wow.
Through Ladd's Addition in Portland, and jumped out and loaded up all the stuff. Then the cardboard would get too big for the hopper, and I have to get up into the truck and jump up and down.
Yeah, push it down.
So things have come a long way in quite a short time.
Yeah. What's your day-to-day look like now in the Composter Recycler Program? What kind of stuff are you working on?
Yeah, so really what we're trying to do is create bite-sized pieces to take on to move on the journey towards sustainable living. Mm-hmm. And minimizing our footprint with climate change and just our carbon output. And really that starts with waste. I mean, it's something that we're intimate about. It's something we do every day. We certainly can talk about it. And so looking at it through that lens has been a good stepping off point. But recycling, I hate to put out the spoiler, is not going to save the world.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. There's a plethora of other actions that we also have to take in, addition to just being a responsible recycler. And part of that is preventing food waste in the home. That's what we're here to talk about today. And I know that in the Composter Recycler classes and workshops, that's something you guys have incorporated into your curriculum. So I just was wondering, what do you see as the biggest problem with food waste that's being generated at home?
Yeah, I'm so glad to be talking about food waste. There was a study, and I can't cite it right now, but they interviewed thousands of people, so pretty good category or just pool of folks and information coming in, and they found two main reasons why people are making food waste from their households. And the first, which doesn't apply to me, but applies to all my kids for sure, is the date labeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so that becomes a big reason why people throw things out. And the second main reason, these are really the two reasons why people make food waste. I mean, there's clearly some other ones, but the two main ones. The next one is just folks make too much food and then they either get bored of it or they can't eat it all and it goes bad and spoils. They don't have the foresight to freeze it. They don't know how to freeze it. And so really, if we can tackle those two things and understand them better, that begins our journey to making less food waste.
We've definitely talked about the magic of the freezer, you know, what that can do for us as far as like saving food and but
Saving money,
saving
time.
Yeah. But I definitely understand that kind of I like to call it leftover procrastination, where I'm always just like, I'll eat that tomorrow. I'll eat that tomorrow. And then it finally gets to the point where it's like, I don't think that's safe anymore.
There definitely is that factor for sure. And then I am just recently discovering that sometimes your cooking's not that good. I'm not saying you particular, but you know, if I make a big batch of something and I'm not really that excited about it, it gets even harder to eat it as leftovers.
Oh my goodness.
So I think becoming a good cook is a vital piece to making less food waste.
And here's a little reference to our episode 5 with Stacy on scrappy cooking, but also throwing Shannon under the bus a little bit here, because I remember the first time I went to one of Stacy's scrappy cooking events. Shannon was talking about her attempt at doing those savory pancakes, and she said they turned out so bad, but yet she was gonna eat them anyway, so she put them in the fridge and.
She powered through.
She did.
She powered through, even though she did not like them.
Yeah.
Which, it's a food waste warrior right there.
Well, and I love how we talk about the waste component of food, but if you really can tackle that, you are better equipped to work in a kitchen. You know how to store things. You have the proper tools. You have the proper knives. You become a better cook, better sous chef, all of that. And, you know, lo and behold, you're cooking better food.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do all that at a very reasonable price and actually save money. And so they're just, you know, we can solve a lot of problems upstream if we're making less food waste.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes with just knowledge. You know, it's one of those things where if you don't know where to start, sometimes you never start.
Yes.
And so
it is a journey.
Just gaining a little bit of knowledge and kind of like that first step kind of leads you into more. And so that's, you know, that is our goal and our hope for this podcast is to provide some resources, some tools, some general knowledge to help people kind of take that first step if that's where they're at. And
well, and just to that note, I have been doing recycling, waste reduction, education, all of that for a long time, green building, sustainability. And I'm just now really getting into this food waste prevention piece. And so it's one that it's perfect timing right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about it, but it's a lot easier to think about not putting the can into the garbage than it is, what do I do with this banana peel?
Yeah.
And, you know, clearly not everyone's going to want to make pulled pork sandwich out of banana peels.
Oh, Shannon just talked about that.
But that's great. If you want to do it, all the more power to you.
So I know like a focal point of this episode is going to be talking about some storage tips.
Yes.
So ways that we can extend the life of our food, which is something I feel like you've taken a particular interest in lately. Was that kind of inspired by all of this movement around food waste reduction, or have you always known how to hold things in your house?
Yeah, no. That is definitely one of the steps along this journey that I'm recently learning, and I think a lot of it is tuning into podcasts like this. You mentioned Stacy. We have a local resource through our WSU extension, SnapEd. Those are available around the state. Clearly, our trade associations. Yeah, it's just tuning in to the whole food waste and becoming inspired. Cooking shows. I mean, there's a lot of good ways to do that as well. So I think, we can start with just a lot of different categories, but produce is a good one to really focus on for proper storage. And for instance, you don't want to put potatoes near your onions and garlic.
Really?
And so that will make your potatoes sprout. And obviously then, once they're growing, it's harder to eat them.
I had
plant them.
I had a sweet potato that was living next to some garlic on top of my microwave for about four months now, and he looks like a miniature forest. Yeah, he can only be plotted in the ground to make more potatoes now.
and actually, sweet potatoes don't grow that way.
Oh,
I know, not quite as easy as planting a potato.
he looks so pretty though.
You can give it a try. So that's a good starting point for folks. Both of those need to be in a kind of dry, dark, cool place. And so I have my onions and garlic in brown paper bags in the bottom of my pantry. I close the door, it's dark. And then I have my potatoes and sweet potatoes on the top stair to my basement, also in brown bags. And then keep them apart. And again, I'm not sure exactly what the chemical reaction is, but the same is true in a fridge is a classic one. If you get apples, I bring in my apples and they go in the crisper, and there's typically a vegetable or fruit setting that you can do. So the fruits like to have a little more oxygen flow. So you set open up that crisper a little bit with that slide device, whatever you've got.
That's because of the ethylene that it produces, correct?
Yes, exactly. And so I will buy a bag of apples, and they will stay, I don't know, 5 months, 6 months.
Wow.
But hopefully I'm eating them faster than that. And that's also a problem where we buy more than we can eat. So you buy 100 apples, how many a day? And again, with citrus, my citrus I will bring home, put right in one of the shelves of my refrigerator. You can leave them in the little bags that they come in, or take them out and just leave them as is. But grapefruits, those little cuties, oranges, lemons, limes, they will last, again, 2-3 months if you properly store them. And then in a fridge, it's nice to have white space. And so if you go to a house, and my sister, it's classic, you open it up and you can't see, it's just completely full. Things are stacked. You can't even see in the back.
Yeah.
And then
forget about things.
Once a week, basically, they go through and they throw probably a third of the fridge away just because of that. So having a lot of white space in your fridge, which is a little contrary, you're like, I got a fridge, I might as well fill it. Keeping it only about a third to half full, then you can see everything. You can see around everything. Put those things to work. So yeah,
it keeps knowing what your inventory is kind of at the forefront of your mind, because you can see everything. It's the less there is, hopefully the more fresh it is.
And it's good to kind of keep going on the produce piece, because I have become a fan of produce. Is typically the thing that's going to go south on you. And whether it's your rubber carrots or your wilted salad, keeping all of that. Carrots you can cut right when you get them. A lot of it is processing, doing things as you come back from the store. So putting your citrus into the fridge, putting your apples into the crisper, putting your onions and garlic into the brown bag in your pantry, and then making sure carrots you could actually cut and put into a water bath, they call it. And so that will keep them crisp. They're cut into pieces that you're actually excited to eat. And then, of course, if they become rubber or on that path, then you can put them into soups and clearly a lot of other things. But in terms of storage, that little bit of that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Getting that up front, I have found to be really, really useful. And then again, you're healthier. So I look in my fridge, I see all these apples in the crisper. I'm like, I'm gonna have an apple with some yogurt.
Gonna have to have an apple with some yogurt.
Apple a day.
And I actually, I don't know, this question just popped into my head, but I always kind of thought, based on how a store keeps their produce is how you should keep your produce.
Oh, I have the same assumption.
I don't know if that was told to me one day. Or maybe I just developed that way of thinking. But you saying like put your apples in the refrigerator, but if you go to the store, they're sitting out unrefrigerated. So do you have any thoughts on that as to like, I don't know, maybe dispelling some of this false assumptions that I've made?
Yeah, I think again, that's probably not. They're just trying to get the stuff out and visible and sold, and they are throwing away a huge amount of food waste.
Absolutely.
And part of it is that they want to make sure it has this appearance of abundance, and so some of it's like the avocados. At some point, they're not sold; they rot. Where I was going though, and I wanted to make sure I touch on it, is I've become a fan of, and I know there's some garbage aspect to this, but again, if we can prevent the food waste from going to the landfill and have some packaging that does go to the landfill, we're actually much better off than buying the produce without that packaging and throwing it into the garbage. So if that makes sense, it's better to have packaged produce. So
like
I buy
netting?
Well, I'm thinking more like I buy frozen vegetables,
Oh,
and I can get
gotcha.
organic, big bulk bag. It's frozen at the peak of its nutritional value. It's never going to go bad because it comes home, goes in the freezer. And then I'm throwing away that bag, but I'm much better off throwing away that bag than someone who thinks, oh, I'm going to buy this fresh broccoli, and then it all goes bad. That goes in the trash. So, thinking about storage in that way as well. We talked about the freezer. You can get fruit that way. So again, not a huge amount into your fridge. Obviously, it's hard. We're busy. It's hard to do the meal planning. It's hard to do the shopping right. We've got these giant big box Costco's where you're buying way more than you need, unless you're a huge family.
Yeah.
Or kind of like what we do at my house is like we'll buy like that 6-pack of chicken thighs or something like that, and we'll separate them all and put them all in the freezer, and then we take them out as we need them and let them thaw. And
exactly, and then having that visibility, so you set it out to thaw in the fridge for 24 hours right in front of you, and then I feel guilty. It's like, oh, I was going to cook this, and now another day's gone by.
Yeah.
You got to cook it.
So I guess you've already hit some of these points already, but to get back to some of the questions that we had, are there any major key tips aside from the ones that you've already mentioned for storing food to increase its lifespan? Like any certain products that you use, airtight containers, or any suggestions for our listeners?
Yes, there's a lot there. One that pops to mind is, and I see this a lot, and actually I used to do it myself. Folks will put things in the freezer or leftovers in like a leftover yogurt container or a to-go container, and those really are not great. They're because what's most likely going to make things turn on us is oxygen. And so I really like those glass snap lid containers. I haven't done this yet, but it's been in the back of my mind, especially for freezing, because you can get nice big ones. And then if you make a large amount of food, which actually can be really helpful, and then make a chili and you freeze some of that or a lasagna, and you've got your leftovers on a day that's busy. And so I do fall victim to the unknown storage in the freezer. What is it? So I'm hoping to get like painter's tape and maybe just a little magic marker and setting that in my refrigerator area, so I can just put that tape on.
Yeah,
My
I'll
mom-
run a piece of tape and then do a little date when it went in the freezer.
Which is a step up for my mom after Thanksgiving. Everything went in the freezer, and on the actual container, she just with a big black magic marker wrote right on the lid. And so we still see cranberries and these other things. So the painter's tape will be a good improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Labeling, though, is incredibly helpful. It takes away any of the guesswork. Like, are these tamales from 2 Christmases ago or
Yes,
just
and the
this
date.
most recent Christmas?
Good one.
Yeah.
Tamales, enchiladas, stir-fried rice. There's some really good ways to use up those.
2 years ago, you must have missed a few spring cleanings with those ones.
Oh, we don't talk about the depths of the freezer.
And, inventorying every so often, going through your pantry. Same thing, be able to see, good storage tips in there. Flour probably should be used pretty quickly. It's not one of those things, and baking powder as well, you don't want that, be 10 years old. So, buy what you need.
I'm curious, do you purchase in bulk for your pantry items?
I don't. I will just typically keep flour, oats, the things I need, and they make a great. Sometimes you can find these. I know there's one here in Vancouver. I don't know the name on me, but you can find these kind of commercial kitchen supply stores. Those would be really good to seek out for I think it's called Cambro. They've got these kind of hard plastic with a real snap-on lid. They stack in your pantry. So that's good. And then, using your stuff, obviously. We all probably have bags of dried beans and lentils and things that are ancient. Quinoa is an ancient grain.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully it's not ancient on your shelf.
But
But
we were wondering if you wanted to talk on any potential health risks that we should be aware of due to improper storage and improper handling as well. I was personally just thinking about like raw meats. And I know that you have extensive knowledge on green cleaning as well. So thought maybe you could provide some suggestions for people who want to be a little bit more intentional with their cleaners and what they could use to disinfect a kitchen area.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for meats, I do think, as we spoke earlier, having that frozen option and then that 24-hour thaw and use is going to be your best bet. Obviously, that's the worst meat that goes bad. So it's different if a carrot becomes a rubber carrot. But one thing that is really important to remember is we have evolved over millions and millions of years, humans. And so our nose knows, and it's set to not eat funky stuff. So that's kind of the first rule of thumb. If it smells funky, do not eat it. That's kind of the safety piece. And that really can overrule a lot of the date labeling, which doesn't have any specific science around it or regulatory purposes other than just to try to explain peak freshness and when the things should move off shelves, simply from the store standpoint.
Almost kind of like a liability protection.
I don't even know what it is. I mean, they got to get their act together, and they're working on it. So I would count on the nose for sure. And then, for things that are like meats and dairies and can, become putrid and bad, I would pay more attention to the dates just to know what's going on. For the cleaning, if you're preparing meats, obviously the best thing would be to have a cutting board, either plastic or glass, that could go in your dishwasher. Then you're just safe, it's sanitized, and you're all set. If you've got, wood or, something that isn't going to be able to go in your dishwasher, then it becomes a little more challenging. You can use cleaning vinegar. Obviously, you always want to start with real hot soapy water. Scrub that in your sink, rinse that off, and then you got, we would recommend not using bleach just because bleach is very caustic. It can, if you're using it, you should wear gloves, which typically we were not going to wear So then you've got these chemical problems. So a cleaning distilled vinegar straight on, and then just let it dry, evaporate. Gives it its cleaning time. You can also use isopropyl alcohol. Some of these things can be not recommended for marble cutting board. So again, it's a complex answer depending on the cutting board you have. Yeah. We do have it on our frequently asked questions. We have a whole green cleaning section on our website.
And we'll include that link in our show notes as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big advocate of also with meats, it kind of comes down to knowing how to cook as well. So
proper temperature.
One rule is never leave the grill.
That's a good rule to have.
Oh, something smells like it's burning.
Actually, charred meat is carcinogenic, so you don't want
it is, yeah. Especially is it more common when it's like a coal barbecue or gas barbecue, or is it just across the board?
I'm not sure.
I thought it was coal because of the actual burning particulates.
Briquettes.
Yeah, briquettes. Yeah. Who knows? That is research for another time.
Yeah, look it up if you're curious. Leave a comment on the YouTube video. Let us know. You guys can, reciprocate some information. Teach us a thing.
So when it comes to meat, obviously people make their own choices on how they want to live. But, I have been told that really we just need like a serving size that's kind of like a deck of cards. And so I think we often eat too much from just a health protein and that standpoint. So meat obviously is more intensive as a diet. So also thinking about that just in terms of ability.
The resources required to produce meat.
Yeah. All food is going to take a lot of water to produce, but with meat you have the added factor of also feeding those animals. So when you're throwing away meat products, there's so many variables and so many things that are being used to cultivate that livestock that's also being, thrown in the trash essentially. And
again, that's kind of a little more technical and called life cycle analysis. But yes, if you're throwing away a bag of rotten apples versus a pound of rotting hamburger meat, the hamburger meat's probably like 100 times more resources lost. So really not wasting meat is a great question. And that's almost the most critical piece.
And not to mention the methane produced, especially beef. So not only do you have all the resources used to grow the beef and the cow, but then also the methane that they release throughout their life. And so it's just multiple factors of
honor your meat. Honor your meat when you purchase it. Yeah. Exactly. Get it eaten. Feeding is obviously the best option. Feed yourself, make leftovers, whatever you have to do. Just try not to throw it in the trash.
From your personal experience, what single habit change is most impactful for our audience to adopt today?
I mean, going on what we were just talking about, I would say, if you're eating meat 7 days a week, try to reduce by 1 day. However that works out for you. If you're 3 days, cut it back to 2 days.
Yeah, that and I don't know if you'd agree with me on this, but I also think it's nice or better to switch things up as well. So, maybe you have beef one day, but you have fish another day. Still meat, but hopefully one's a little less impactful than the other.
Try tofu, everyone.
Tofu.
Tempeh.
Beans. Yeah, exactly. And in your experience, you obviously have a lot of it, but especially as a compost recycler lead, what is one thing that you wish everyone knew about food waste?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, there's actually two. One is food is nutrient. And so it's our fuel. Just like going to the gas station and filling up your car with gas, we fill ourselves up with food. And so when we are throwing away food obviously you're going to have an onion skin, you're not going to eat that. And so having zero food waste to landfill, to me, means we are recirculating all those nutrients back into life. And so decomposers will break all that down, whether it's municipal composting, our composting in the backyard, and then those are used to grow things again. And they just come around and around and around. That's how nature works. So when we send food waste to the landfill, it's a dead end. And folks might think in a landfill, it's just like a compost pile and it breaks down. And the fact is that doesn't happen in a landfill because the way they're engineered, there's no oxygen allowed in there. They cover it every day. They squash everything out air-wise. And then the stuff basically becomes like a stomach. And we think about cow stomachs and what comes out, and that is that methane piece. And so keeping food waste out of our trash is more important than trying to figure out how to recycle all the different plastics. You'd be much better off throwing away all your plastic and no food waste than throwing away your food waste and recycling a bunch of plastic.
Yeah, most definitely. And we were lucky to get and sit down with Saray and talk about that kind of food cycle and all of the nutrients that are, you know, it's like money lost for buying fertilizers when we could just be utilizing all these food scraps that have all these powerful soil nutrients that can help grow more food.
And that happens to me. It makes no sense. I'm an economist. It's like I go to the store, I buy food, and I throw it away. Like, I just wasted money.
Exactly. We had this one in as a joke. It was, and what should we all do with our unavoidable food scraps? And then we all say, compost. So that's the rundown on that one.
You don't have food scrap. I'm kidding.
You don't have them in the first
It's
place. You eat your banana peels.
Well, banana peels go in my backyard compost or to my worm bin. So I am zero food waste to landfill.
Yes.
And then we also do have opportunities. Probably not going to put a turkey carcass into my backyard compost bin. You shouldn't. But now we have drop-offs, and you've probably heard about those around town. So there are ways to put zero food waste in a landfill. That's the takeaway from Food Waste Prevention Week. The goal, ultimate goal, is zero food waste to landfill.
And it's possible. It's definitely
And I'm doing
possible.
it. I'm a living example.
Exactly. Composting Pete. All right. So I'm going to reiterate the question, guys. What should we do with our unavoidable food scraps?
Compost.
Perfect. And then we have one final question. I'm going to have Austin do the honors of taking us away.
Yeah. Well, you know, before we hit this last question, I just wanted to ask, was there anything else you wanted to share on proper storage techniques? And, you know, I just want to make sure that we're not missing anything, and we're giving our audience everything that they need to lead a better food storage lifestyle.
Yeah, I would just say, and maybe this comes up afterwards in resources, but Green Neighbors and the website that we'll be sharing, we've got the tips and tricks on storage.
Yep.
We will continuously be adding to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. And a little bit later, we'll be touching on some other products that are helpful in reducing our waste as a whole. But lastly, we like to end every interview with a personal reflection from our expert guests. What does food waste prevention mean to you?
Food waste prevention to me means I'm doing what I can do within my control in a really troubled, at times, feeling world that we're in. And it is empowering, it's available, and really it's hopeful in a sense. It's something everyone has access to and can do. Through our program, we distribute compost bins at no cost. We do worm bins at no cost. We train people how to keep some of this food waste, turn it into fertilizer, use it for gardening. And really, this is our moment. You know, we've got to get this together, because if we can't keep food waste out of the trash and we expect to solve climate change and homelessness and some of these other major issues, we're not going to be able to do that. So we need to get some successes under our belt. To me, food waste prevention is one thing we can excel in as a society.
Motivational, as always. Thank you so much, Pete. You have been an amazing guest. It was an honor to have you on the show. We'll include the references and resources that Pete talked about in this interview in the show notes, so make sure you head there, go to the clarkcountycompost.org website and look through all of the amazing information that they have stored there. And thank you again, Pete.
Thank you.
And stick around. We are going to hang out and talk more about food storage after this short break.
The average family throws out $1,500 of food every year. That's a lot. Imagine what you could do with extra cash. There are simple ways to reduce your food waste and increase your savings. It starts with a meal plan, a menu, a shopping list, and ends with a little creativity, fresh recipes, ingredient swaps, and new kitchen skills. Get tips to reduce food waste and make your dollar go further. Know the cost. Go to usefoodwell.org to learn more.
All right, so this episode we've been talking about proper food storage techniques, and there are 3 big categories to consider, and those are temperature, ethylene, and airflow. So as Pete mentioned as well, oxygen is really important. Airflow is really important. And when I say important, that's not always like important in a good way. It could be important in a bad way. And ethylene gas is one of those things where you just have to be very mindful of them, or mindful of it. Naturally released gas from some fruits such as apples and bananas, which is ethylene, that hastens the ripening of other produce.
Which is something I didn't know existed until we did this research. I was a fool. I'd put my bananas anywhere.
Yeah, I still do sometimes because I'm just like, this is my fruit basket. And I just kind of put it all together, even though I know it's probably not the best.
So we're here to warn you guys about ethylene.
But yeah, some of the other produce, such as cabbage, leafy greens, lettuce, broccoli, the list goes on. There are some other fruits that don't produce ethylene, but it can still cause them to ripen. So, just important to keep those things separate. So whether you refrigerate these items or not, you should keep ethylene-sensitive fruits and veggies separate from the gas-emitting ones. And there are products that can help mitigate the effects of ethylene gas. There are some products that will absorb the excess ethylene gas, which will reduce that chemical reaction between the one producing the ethylene gas and the ones that don't, and causing everything to ripen quicker. So, those are also good to look at and potentially, see if that works for you.
Yes, most definitely. And it's also important to note that produce that is best kept at air temperature or room temperature needs good airflow. So things like the bananas, onions, potatoes, etc. will last longer if they're maybe taken out of the bag and able to breathe. So if you're curious about particular items and other storage tips and tricks, we will be linking the Food Waste Prevention Week Living Green Neighbors website page in this podcast. We have a lot of storage tips and tricks there, so please go and check it out.
So other products that we've come across, whether we have personal experience with them or not, there are plenty of options out there, including storage containers that allow airflow and regulate both oxygen and carbon dioxide via a filter. There are products that help with moisture absorption. There's reusable produce bags that balance airflow, providing oxygen or reducing oxygen, and balancing moisture as well. Produce that is best kept refrigerated keeps best when sealed in reusable pouches or recycled jars. This holds in the moisture, preventing the produce from dehydrating and protects from the effects of ethylene gas.
Yeah, and we have talked a good amount about buying airtight storage containers. Vacuum sealed bags are also a great way to keep meat. That's what my family would always do, is vacuum seal and then stick a steak in the freezer for 6 months or so, maybe longer, depending. But I think that I've shared this with Austin previously. I use airtight storage containers for all of my bulk goods, and I have granola with an unknown age that is still fresh in my pantry because of it. So really, if you're able to pick up some airtight storage containers, they sometimes will have them at Goodwill, so you can find them at a discounted price. Or Sometimes asking around, going to like buy nothing groups, you can find storage containers that are maybe even free. I know I had brought up that I needed more mason jars, and I had a coworker who had a surplus and offered to give them to me. So it doesn't have to be expensive to find these solutions, but it does take a little bit of, the want and the will to do it. There's a lot of little tricks that are really free that can save your food for quite a long time, like putting bean sprouts in water will keep them for weeks. Same with cucumbers, for example. And that's just, I can't say free because we all pay for our water, but a really low cost option to get these vegetables to really stretch their lifetime.
I know with a lot of greens as well, if you just put the base, like for example, like asparagus, if you just cut the ends and then put the ends into like an inch or two of water in the refrigerator, it'll stay for so much longer.
Yeah, same with herbs too.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's just so many tips and tricks like that. The internet is full of them. And so, it doesn't take much to really try and extend the life of our food.
Yes. And if you're someone who might struggle with keeping track of their inventory in their fridge and in their pantry, kind of like I think Pete had mentioned his sister having a huge fridge that is constantly packed. It's really easy to lose things. We're going to link some food inventory apps in the show notes as well that can at least get you into that kind of taking stock, taking inventory mindset and help you build some of those skills.
And those apps, it'll help you track your inventory of your food and the expiration dates. And that'll allow you to be more prepared to utilize food before it goes bad. And some of these apps even have the ability to create shopping lists and also suggest recipes depending on what's in your inventory. And that just overall helps you reduce your food waste.
Yeah, especially I would also tune into episode 5 of this podcast to learn from Stacy how she finds out how to creatively reuse what's currently in her fridge and in her pantry for new recipes. I really cannot stress enough a lot of these proper fridge storage techniques being just vital to saving you food, saving you money, saving you even effort in the long run. So organizing, rotating, and labeling will help you keep your fridge organized. You're keeping similar items together, and that helps you avoid buying duplicates of something you might already have at home. Keep perishables on the bottom shelf, like meat, and then condiments and things like that are less perishable can be kept in the door of the fridge because they don't require that cooler temperatures that meat does. For snacks and drinks, keep them visible. So place things like yogurt and snacks that you plan on eating soon on a shelf that is within eye line for easy access. I, for example, will sometimes buy a kombucha and it gets pushed to the back of the fridge and I forget that I ever had it. So creating a designated spot for eat first items is a really easy way to make sure that nothing's getting missed and nothing's just going bad in the back of your fridge. Also, store your leftovers in a clear container, sometimes stackable clear containers, so that way you're not overlooking items. I know if I have something in a closed off food container, something that is maybe a bento, lunchbox, I don't remember what's in it. And then it becomes a game where you're maybe a little bit scared to open it at a certain point.
Especially if it's not labeled and you're kind of well, how long has that been in there?
Yeah, exactly. So avoid fridge fright by keeping everything in see-through containers so you know exactly what it is. And utilize your freezer. Every episode, the freezer has come up. All of our experts cannot recommend it enough. Freeze excess food or leftovers to extend their shelf life. And use some painter's tape to label with dates as to when it went in the freezer for easy reference. I'm not saying the 2-year-old Christmas tamales cannot get ate, but it might be good if you know where and when they came from, just for your own peace of mind. And again, I would like to plug our Food Too Good to Waste living page on the Green Neighbors site. It really is such a handy resource, and we're constantly updating it. If you're listening to this podcast, maybe you found that there. Please, I implore you to go and explore that website. And I want to take a minute to thank our guest again. Pete was a wonderful expert to have on the show.
And Pete is a wonderful coworker, and we appreciate all he does for us.
30 years and excellent singer too.
Yeah. And guitar player.
Yeah, really. Full package.
Quite fancy fingers there.
I would agree. I'll let you take it away.
To tackle the issue of food waste is to save money, save the environment, and save people. We hope you'll tune into our next episode where we discuss creative leftover reuse. In the meantime, we hope you reflect on what food waste prevention means to you.
See you next time.